presentation is going to be on culture. And the way I teach culture is I keep in mind what the students might want to retain, and it's not grammar, it's memorable elements of experiences in class and encountering culture. And I do that through a variety of mediums. We use the textbooks, they look up songs, look up news, look up videos, look up history, and I also have a TV show I have them watch. This semester, the topics are music, sports, carnival, a TV show, festivals in Brazil and throughout the Lusophone world. And then towards the end of the semester, we have a reading day on Portugal, because the first semester and half of Portuguese, we've been focusing on Brazil and the diversity throughout Brazil. We're going to move beyond Brazil. And then the last activity is looking at timelines of Lusophone or Portuguese-speaking countries. My styles of teaching this include reading days, which we do in the target language, culture days, where we do preparation and follow-up in the target language, but during class that day, there's a sharing in English. And then the homework assignment of watching the episodes of Cidade dos Homens with listening comprehension questions in the target language. And then on the exam, I have follow-up questions about the culture where they write in English. That means that I'm having them engage with culture at a personal level, teaching a partner, talking in a small group, working with the class in a large group, and then follow up where they see each other's work and comment to each other. So in that way, I see them receiving information, discovering information on their own, and sharing what they discover. So my goal is that they will retain it. And when I do exams, my questions are not specific detail focused. They're just, what did you learn from your partners, or what did you learn from the class discussion? So last semester, we were teaching online because global pandemic, and I changed my activity, and I created this, which was an incredibly entertaining, engaging activity where I prepared a list of topics ranging from politics to culture to art, sports, and nature. And the students could choose topics that interested them and then do a little bit of research, write about it in English, and post on 3 different ones. And then for each of those assignments, they needed to look at 2 group member posts. So they, in essence, had exposure to 9 different topics. At the end of the semester, I also had them do a culture activity of recording a video on Flipgrid, talking about investigation they did into activities, traditions for celebrating New Year's Eve in Brazil, of which there are many. That was inspired by a funny video in the target language that we watched. Capoeira is one of the sports we'll look at today. So the quick context for this mini lesson is, last Friday, the students, we had a reading day where, as a class, we read Os Clubes Esportivos e a História do Futebol, and we were able to work on pronunciation, reading comprehension, and get a little bit of big details, classism in sports, racism in sports, what it means to be a fan. Following the group work, they worked in small groups to do target language follow-up, reading comprehension activities, and then basic research focusing on soccer teams and soccer in Brazil. Then on Monday, they had homework of reading this reading, which you see on the right, with 2 comprehension activities. Plus, they had to find an article in English about any element of sports in Brazil and summarize it in 1 to 2 sentences at their own level in Portuguese. Post that before class. In class, I showed them the reading and we mentioned what sports we saw, and then class was just watching videos and talking about our responses to them. So this mini lesson comes from that. For homework today, the students needed to find their own video of a sport and then pick their favorite part, write about it in the target language, and then look at someone else's post. So that is the follow-up to what the mini lesson would be. For this activity, I'm going to focus on cena and capoeira, with the hopes that we will make connections to our own cultures or heritage cultures, and this is how I've planned to space out the time. So, esta apresentação é sobre os esportes no Brasil. Todos sabemos que o futebol é o mais importante, mas hoje vamos falar sobre outros esportes. So, to turn our minds on, I want to ask if any of you know something about Ayrton Senna or Formula One in Brazil.
I know of him in Ecuador. I'm from Ecuador. We used to know that he was a Formula One racer, but we also knew that he was somehow romantically involved with Xuxa. I don't know if you know her.
Nope. Full disclosure, I knew nothing about him.
Yes, that's true. That's Shusha actually became famous after dating Senna.
Okay, this is great.
Yeah.
This is what my
Yes.
students knew. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to build on what we know. Honestly, before learning about Senna, I knew nothing about Senna. So I'm going to show you a few videos, clips of videos, and then the follow-up question would be, would the tragic death of a revered athlete in our country lead to a similar response? When Senna died, the government declared 3 days of mourning. And as you see, 1 million people came to his funeral procession. So Senna had a 10-year career and he won championships 3 times, the third of which was in Brazil. I have a clip of that. And he was clearly a champion and leading and winning races all the time, being on the podium often. These details come from a video I found when I was searching for clips that was created, I think, 23 years after his death. And since then, it's been seen over 225,000 times. So Senna remains in the hearts of Brazilians. And the clips I'm showing try to show why he was so revered. And from what I have found, he had an incredible character.
Suas mais belas frases, Senna disse: seja você quem for, seja qual for a posição social que você tenha na vida, a mais alta ou a mais baixa, tenha sempre como meta muita força, muita dedicação e sempre faça tudo com muito amor e com muita fé em Deus, que dia você chega lá. De alguma maneira, você chega lá.
So that quote, I know not all of you speak Portuguese, so he was saying, no matter who you are or what social class you come from in life, the lowest or the highest, always do your best in life, do everything with dedication and strength and love and faith in God and the hope that one day you arrive there. And so you're going to see a crash, but that is not his crash. That I have a clip of in a moment too.
Já se passaram muitos anos, mas o ser humano, o homem, o mito Ayrton Senna, ainda mora em nossos corações.
Here is Eric Comas, the man whose life he saved after he was in a crash. And so we're going to see a news clip of him running across and saving this man's life by turning the car off.
Friday morning was nice and sunny, but not for Eric Comas, who crashed heavily in the fast Blanchimont sweep before the pits. Ayrton Senna was the first to reach the scene of the crash, and he rushed to help the motionless Frenchman.
The car rotated at least twice. That took a lot of the speed away from the car before it hit the end of the tire wall. But a big impact for Comas. He was momentarily stunned and knocked out, but by the time the marshals got to him, he was beginning to come around. He was taken out of the car, taken to the...
And he gone, just in a fraction of a second. So you realize that you're nobody. Suddenly you're nobody, and your life can have an end suddenly. This is part of your life. And you either face it in a professional, in a cool manner, or you just drop it, just leave it and don't do it anymore, really. And I happen to like too much what I do. You just drop it. I can't drop it.
It's part of his life. And the tragic irony there is that he died in a car crash in Italy, 94, and people met the plane and 1 million people came to the funeral procession. So here are clips of that. And so here we have my consolidation and debriefing follow-up really quickly. What are your responses to the videos?
He seems like a really good guy.
Yes, that's what I was aiming for.
Not just famous, but actually a good guy too.
Yes, willing to jump out of his car and run across an active racetrack to turn off the car of a race car driver who had crashed. Could you think of anyone whose death would lead to such a strong response?
I don't know if we have quite the same reverence in our culture.
I agree.
I don't know
I
if
agree.
we do have, and we tend to like to villainize famous people.
This is what I thought, because I think of Kobe Bryant and then immediately people were saying other things about him. Okay, so the second quick topic is capoeira. Because the students had done the activity last semester, at least one of them had, and a couple had read his work, they knew they came from Africa related to slavery, dance fighting, martial arts, stand in a circle. And I asked if they'd seen videos, and they hadn't. So that's why we have my culture a day of watching videos. So I'm going to show you a few clips of capoeira, and you can hear the music, which is beautiful. You can see how it's a martial art, but it's a game and a dance without an intent to kill. So capoeira was developed in the 16th century, and they credit it to coming from Angola. Slaves designed it to be able to rise up and escape from their slave owners, and when they did, they moved into places which are called quilombos. The most famous quilombo community of escaped slaves was Palmares, and I read that there were 10,000 people living there, and I also read that there were up to 30,000. With the music, there's a berimbau. I'll point out, you'll see it. It looks like a giant bow and arrow, and that is where they play the music. Bateria is the word for the percussion that goes with it. Roda is the word for how they stand in a circle, and the phrase entra na roda means go into the game, go into the circle. Jogo is a game between the two people, and then one of the important moves, the most common used, is the ginga. After slavery was abolished, capoeira was also outlawed because it's a violent form of control. But 50 years later, the ban was lifted, and it has since become part of Brazilian culture as well as studied throughout the world. So,
yeah, if you rock like this, I pledge allegiance to the hip hop, yeah.
So there you just see that they're training. Next, I have a fight between a man and a woman. It's pretty amazing where you see them doing the Jenga move and engaging with each other and not actually doing an impact. That's a Jenga. All right, now this is a clip from Texas, where I did my PhD. You can see there's 3 berimbaus, and then you can see 2 people with percussion, or bateria, and you're going to see bits of 3 different pairs doing the jogo. Because this is performed on stage, they're not standing in a circle. When you're watching that, I generally get fascinated with the athleticism, but if you're listening to the music, you can hear that there's a call and an answer in the music. So that's part of it. And then the last clip I have here is just of someone who teaches capoeira as self-defense. And it's important because at the end, he gives a bit more about the history, and then we'll go into the follow-up question.
So now, as you guys know, it wasn't just the U-punch alone, it was the headbutt as well. So it was knee, drop, block, you put bam. That's what happened. Drop down. Okay? Once he went down, palm went down to the swing kick. Remember? Palm checked his thigh, palm checks, back. Then finish with the spin back fist. Bam, shing, out. So, for those of you who think capoeira is no good for self-defense, I disagree. If you think that Brazilian warriors who were outnumbered 35-1 and didn't have guns, dogs, and whatnot, were successfully fighting off slavers just because they could dance really well, you're entitled to that opinion. But history bears witness that the exact opposite is the case. Capoeira is one of the most dynamic, devastating self-defense systems in the history of the world today.
All right, so my follow-up question is, what were your responses? And is there something in our culture that may have a problematic or uncommonly known history that is currently accepted? There are elements of society, life, culture that are just part of what we do, but it's neat to know more history. So I wanted to give you my mini conclusion. So after that class day, the students were asked to find out about more sports. But on my other culture days, I have them do a target language response where they talk about things they learned from their own research and from each other. And my pedagogical goal of teaching culture this way, of exposing them to a lot of things and then asking them to tell me what they retain, is to pique their interest. Hopefully they'll keep looking at something or learn more and retain it for the rest of their lives, whereas memorizing conjugations of ver and vir will not. And I can tell you that I've received many positive response from students, comments in after class, and then the responses on the exam, their answers are diverse and informed and engaging. The history day, where I have them do 2 timelines and then teach each other what they've learned about parallel country histories, Lusophone countries. One girl said that that was her favorite day all year.